Hi everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our presentation about Amity. I'd first like to offer a trigger warning because we will be talking about mental health and suicide. I'd like to start by introducing our incredible team. My name is Miriam, and my team members are Bolu, Gideon, and Natasha. I'd also like to give a big shout out to Rezwan and Inwai, our mentors, because they've been very supportive throughout this entire process. So let's start by defining the problem. I think we can all agree that COVID-19 has had a serious impact on most of our mental health, especially that of teenagers and young adults. In between quarantine and not being able to see our friends and family, a lot of us have felt worn out and lost motivation, specifically with virtual learning. However, during this pandemic, social media has actually been one of the ways that we have managed to stay connected in a virtual world. Sometimes talking about our struggles online can actually be easier behind a screen than talking to someone face to face. Unfortunately, this has also led to posting more about suicidal behavior and ideation, and thus increases in suicide. Over the past year, a numerous amount of studies have actually shown the impact of COVID-19 on mental health disorders and suicide rates in different countries. Specifically, results have shown that recent suicidal ideation was higher by 1.6 times in March 2020 when the pandemic started compared to March 2019. Results have also showed that suicide attempters were actually posting more about suicide on social media by 0.4 times more than compared to non-suicide attempters. I'd now like to pass it to Natasha and Gideon to talk about our solution.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Natasha. It's great to be here. So I'm here to talk about our proposed solution, which is Amity. So Amity is a proposed social media plugin that will identify when a user is experiencing suicidal ideation and poor mental health. This would be based on the user's text post or captions, depending on how the plugin is integrated, and it will basically identify if the user is identified as showing suicidal signals or ideations or signs. In an integration, this plugin would then display photo and video memories with friends and family along with related messages. This would be accompanied by a guide of mental health resources if the user has chosen to opt into this process before, because we want to make sure that user privacy and consent are kept at the forefront of all this. The goal of this is to let the user know that there is help in case they want it. As Miriam said before, a lot of people have been experiencing hardship through this pandemic. They might not even realize that they need help, and sometimes it's just easier to use social media to let those thoughts sort of escape into the void. But if we can sort of reintegrate them into their life with loved ones and show them memories, they can think back to times where things were better and things might look up for them. In addition, we hope to accompany them with verified mental health resources if they choose and if they've consented to it. And if the user is on the younger side and their parents have consented, then they would also be notified as well. So I also want to talk a little bit about our project pipeline. So the first thing what would happen is that the user, by whatever medium they choose, so if this was Twitter, this would be a tweet. If it was Instagram, it would be a caption. The post text would be classified under an NLP detection model. The model would essentially check for signs of suicidal ideation or behavior. And so during the course of our project, we actually looked into specific phrases that mental health researchers have been compiling in order to define what actually constitutes a verifiable phrase that identifies suicidal ideation. If this is detected with a certain probability, then we would, somewhere down the road, display to the user a personalized display of memories, and perhaps also a personalized guide of mental health resources. If the user is on the younger side, say 13 and younger, but this would be ultimately decided by whichever social media platform we're on, consent would be sent to family, close friends also, just to sort of have the user regain a support system in their life to reach out to if they need it. And obviously, again, this would all be done with user consent, and it would be an opt-in policy. And the other outcome would be if no suicidal ideation or behavior was detected. In that case, nothing is really shown, although we would want our social media integration to be having proposed mental health resources regardless of that. So we can talk also about who needs this market, and the reality is that I think a lot of people need this market. Like Miriam said, this pandemic has been difficult for a lot of people, especially for younger users, and younger people are also more inclined to use social media. And with social behavior going more digitized, it's really important that we have mental health infrastructure in place to sort of help people with issues that they're facing. So our primary users in terms of Amity would actually be social media platforms instead. We think rather than working as a standalone model, this would be more effective being integrated in another platform. So again, if this was Twitter, this would be analyzing users' tweets. If it was Instagram, it would be analyzing captions, Facebook posts. So this is very generalizable. Our secondary users, though, are friends and family. So especially if you have, a teenage you have a teenage son or daughter who's on Instagram or who's on Twitter, as a parent, you're likely to sort of want to be kept in somewhat of a loop, right? If your child is experiencing some really poor mental health, if they've opted in and if you've consented, then it's obviously something that I think a lot of parents would be happy to have. Our tertiary users would be the users themselves. So these would be mostly high school and college students. But again, I think everyone could use this feature. That's probably just the market that we'd focus on at the very beginning. So now I'm going to pass it off to Gideon to talk a little bit about end user survey stats, as well as the actual model.
Thank you, Natasha. So, just a little bit about the user survey. So, we sent out a user survey that people could fill out and form so that we could get some feedback on what people think of this exactly. So, we got 53 respondents in total, majority of them being college students and parents, given that the majority of our team was college students. And we really wanted to, again, use this to determine what they thought of this whole experiment in this project. So, out of the 53 who we sent out the survey to, 79.2% knew someone who had committed suicide in the past 2 years. 100% used social media, and 62.2% of all the respondents were interested in this product and thought it was a good idea. So the reason why I'm bringing up these metrics is, like Natasha was saying earlier, suicide is something that really affects everyone here, and I feel like almost everyone knows someone who has suffered from either suicide or mental health in general. And everyone really uses social media, as we can see about this 100% social media metric. And the reason why this was, around 63% is like Natasha was mentioning earlier with privacy. And given the day and age of how, our data is really exposed out there in the world, people are somewhat hesitant to support this because, they didn't want their data to, I guess, feel a little bit their privacy. They wanted to have space, and this is something that's very, I guess, sincere and a sensitive topic as well. So data collection, data privacy is going to be an utmost importance for this as well. So in terms of the end user survey comics, tagging back to that, so things that we were really receiving was the positive feedback was we really wanted to be raising social awareness and really reducing suicide depression rates, and really the biggest thing was preventing silent suffering and trying to really prevent those, the steps in which we can take where not everyone might know, but we would be able to detect a type of history or a different type of pattern, really track that unusual behavior. And some of these comments that we see here, social media has always been known to be a contributing factor to suicide, and seeing social media be used to fight suicide itself would be an amazing thing to do. And that was really the I guess overarching goal of Amity and why we really wanted to pursue this. So in terms of the solution development, the first thing we needed to do was grab the data. So in terms to get the data to build the model, we had to query 10,000 tweets from the Twitter API relating to suicide ideation in verifiable suicidal language. Like Natasha was mentioning earlier, we used certain keyword phrases that have been researched over and over again. Examples like I want to kill myself, or I want to die, or I hate my life, things that really detect that negative mental health, or people are not feeling good. These are kind of the at risk, and we would classify them as at risk, categorize them as at risk because they're saying depending on their language. And then we also queried and merged together a data set that we found online. It's called the Sentiment 140 NLP data set conducted by some Stanford researchers, which is just a bunch of tweets that are just like very general and just pulled off the Twitter API. We also queried them both from Palo Alto, California, just so that the model would be much more accurate. In terms of how like the algorithms you use for training and validation, we reprocessed it using NLP, like tokenization and lemmonization, and we tested two models: a bidirectional LSTM NLP model, and then a model that uses stochastic gradient descent classifier. And then our evaluation and what we outputted was a model that model outputs a binary classification of either at risk or not at risk with a probability percentage. And then here's Miriam with the solution now.
So as you can see, wait, sorry. Sorry, guys. Okay, I can't seem to make the video work, but I will show you basically in snippets. So here I'm logging into my Twitter social with the Amity plugin. Sorry, I'm gonna try show it directly from. So yeah, so here I'm logging into the Twitter plugin, and I'm gonna show you an example of, for example, a tweet that would not be identified as at risk, so nothing happens. Here's another example. And now I'm going to show you an example of a tweet that would be identified as being at risk, and you will see a pop-up come up. Unfortunately, due to time restrictions, we were not able to implement the picture slides and the video memories. We do think this is a very important feature that we want to implement in the future, but that's definitely something that we would work on. So here you can see the pop-up that is coming up, and it gives you a little motivational message. And when you close it, it redirects you to the National Prevention Suicide Lifeline. So I'm going to conduct the competitive landscape now. So I think a lot of us know that there are a lot of applications right now that exist that are meant to help with suicide, such as the Stay Alive app, the Reminder app, and the MY3 app. However, our competitive advantage is that the fact that these applications actually have to be downloaded by the user. So the user has to realize that they need help. The goal of Amity, the plugin, is actually to be more subtle. So if someone doesn't realize that they may be feeling down, that they have resources that they can use to get better, the goal of the plugin is to do this. And as well, in specifically the MY3 app, the user has to consciously take a mood test every single day, and this is what determines whether they are at risk of suicide. However, Amity, with the model that we're creating, is going to predict the user's mood directly. There's a lot of social media platforms that have actually launched suicide prevention tools. They are features that are allowing other users to report the posts related to suicide or self-harm. However, the problem is that most of these things usually just get taken down and rely on other people to report it. And additionally, because this goes through customer service, it tends to be quite a slow process, and there's no direct contact with the user, whereas our model is going to be much faster at detecting it. A lot of these apps as well don't comply with the suicide prevention strategies marked by the BMC medicine. So although our model doesn't have all 6 right now, we have about 4. In the future, we want to work on to make sure that we can implement all of these prevention strategies to make sure that everyone and all the users are getting the help that they need.
Hey folks, I'm sorry, but you're over time. So I'm gonna have to stop right here. Okay. We have about 1 minute for Q&A. So judges, please feel free to give some questions and feedback.